Let's dive in. And I thought, just as a starting point, Tyler, maybe talk a little bit about your formidable experience as an entrepreneur, sort of what you started off doing after college and sort of where you traveled from there.
All right. Well, Brad, you give me hope about doing a remake of The Matrix now that I've got a gillion gigabits per second here behind me. I started out, I guess, when I was a kid in an entrepreneurial role and then transitioned later on to role in finance, and that was selling baseball cards, enough to have a mail order company, and I started when I was 12, and I had a boatload that I sold when I was 14 and didn't know about taxes, so I got a visit from my dad about how to pay taxes, but it helped pay for college at Georgetown, which was good. So that was kind of the beginning of the entrepreneurial days, and then I cut my teeth in finance by sleeping under the desk in a cot literally in the early 90s, working 100-hour work weeks at Alex Brown in investment banking in Baltimore. Learned that point at when I was there. It was the early days of the technology bubble. Actually, was just started. And I was an analyst on Boston Chicken, which is later became Boston Market as financial analyst. And they threw all my numbers out the door as they went in and built a book over 30x in subscription when they went public. The importance of that is that Netscape came out in their IPO about 3 weeks later. And so some pundits kind of say that whole technology overvaluation at that time period was due to Boston Chicken. So got that going for me. Like I said, they threw out all the valuations out the window. So from there, when I was in business school in Boston, I started two companies. One was a retail company. It was educational software, toys, books, games, those kind of things with Simon Property Mall. Way too much work for the return. It was profitable, so we sold it. But more importantly, I started a technology company. We got a group of business school friends together for a class project. It's called Chemdex, and it was the first business-to-business marketplace out there. It's supply chain managed, basically, where all buyers and sellers in one industry could come together and conduct e-commerce in one platform, auction, RFP, catalog, that kind of stuff. Really, really fun stuff, I can tell. And we started in specialty chemicals, which makes it even more fun. But I had my Alex Brown bonus money, and there was another kid from Nebraska I grew up with, and I said Nebraska. I knew I wasn't going to say that in this auditorium. And we funded it. And 3 weeks later after graduated, we went out to Silicon Valley and Kleiner Perkins, John Doerr, Brooke Byers. They funded us, and we had an $8 billion market cap in less than 2 years. It was the craziness, hype. We'd announce a new industry vertical once we were public, like a healthcare marketplace, and our stock market cap would go up about $500 million on the same day. And I knew that it was coming to the end when I was meeting with the head of Georgia Pacific. And I was in Atlanta, had a slide up there that showed, the strength of our company, and it was our market cap. And he said, and I'm going to have some blanks in here instead of swear words. He said, Tyler, it takes me blankety-blank years to grow a blankety-blank tree, and your blankety-blank market cap's bigger than mine. Something's wrong with this picture. And it was. We had, there was just a lot of hype, but we bought some software companies on the way down. But it afforded me a new life as an entrepreneur once the lockup was over the IPO. Should I pause there before moving on, Brad?
Don't pause. Keep going. Keep rolling.
I've heard enough about myself already, but my mom would be proud. So I took that liquidity, and I always wanted to be, when I was investment banking, on the other side of the table. I wanted to be the client. It was after a drafting session where they had a Papa John's, and we're in there late night, and we'd order pizza in the drafting session for their IPO prospectus or a follow-on prospectus. And he was so mad that because they screwed up the pizza order so bad that he went out there in the city of Baltimore, in the middle of Baltimore, and went and made pizzas that night all night because he was just so frustrated. And I said, I want to be that guy making pizzas in the middle of the night because I care so much about being an entrepreneur and my company. And so once I got the liquidity event, humble amount of personal liquidity, I could kind of do what I wanted to do. It was a mix of really alternative assets. One of the first things I did was bought a solid waste company. Again, really sexy stuff. Thank you. And And then we did buy this company that was appealing, and it was the world's largest private jet dealership in Texas. And it's called Tyler Jet, and I didn't buy it because my name's Tyler, and it was just in Tyler, Texas. And they had 30 jets, Gulfstreams, Falcons, Hawkers, Lears, those kind of things in inventory. Well, the owner had bought a NASCAR team a couple years before. They were cash flowing $10 million a year. He owned it solely. He's a real cult of personality with this guy. He's just the best darn salesman of all time. Well, that NASCAR team's hood sponsor was Lycos. And I don't know if the technology folks out here remember Lycos, because they're gone. And they had a $15 million a year hood sponsorship with his race car team. And they said, sue us, we don't have the money. Let's go search for it.
He's never practiced that line.
Yeah, that was just tonight. That was
well
fresh.
done.
That was freshy fresh. So,
I clearly have competition.
yeah, I'm here with the Zen master of venture capital. Like that, I've got lots to learn right here. I'm feeling it. So we went. So here we are. I go in, and his Lycos pulled out and said, "Sue us." And so his business and net worth, he pumped in about $25 million out of his personal balance sheet. He's starting to head towards bankruptcy. So we did a short sale arrangement with the banks. We put in a few $1 million into the operating company, went to the banks and said, hey, let us sell it under market value here. It's better than taking it in bankruptcy. Well, we did that. We peeled through several airplanes, and then he embezzled several $1 million of my money. He also committed bank fraud in the process of doing that, and with the CFO in cahoots. And that's where I learned due diligence. And, being an entrepreneur, you're not really expecting that to happen. And that's definitely what they don't teach you in Harvard Business School, is how to deal with criminals. And, so lots of lessons, learned from that. And that's... we had due diligence, so it's a lot of the legal due diligence, a lot of, partnership issues, financial controls. I had to, in the middle of the night in Tyler, Texas, break into my own office because the CFO had the keys and, Jimmy the locks, and I owned it, to discover that there was just money just leaving and to a boat in the Bahamas. And that's how they're embezzling the money. It sounds like fiction, and I'm going to write a book someday with it. But in the meantime, I still hold the world record on eBay. You can Google it at 1 billion gigabytes per second here in Boulder pretty soon. But it was really fun. It was a little on for a ride. But then embezzle the money. So they are in jail, and the one of them's about to get out, the CFO. But it was crushing. I moved my family, there, and it tested my relationship, my resolve, My wife's a news anchor. She's a news anchor here, and she does a 10 o'clock show on Channel 2. Tune in. And she had to move out of her comfort job, that she was in at NBC, and so it just wasn't worth it. And it was pretty traumatic, but learned from it. Learned the process of due diligence, the real financial controls, like signing on the bank account and password access. And, I've got a laundry list of things, lessons that I can actually even sum up a little later. So from there, I won't hold it for this session, but we took our faith and we turned it over, to God, and we said, let's get out of here, and we're going to turn over to you. And then a few weeks later, we got a call when we were just really down and feeling like such victims with it, and got a call from a Denver news station here for my wife to come here, and which was really important for us since I had pulled her out of her other job to come to Texas. So we moved up here. Then I go through what I call my 100% entrepreneur stage, and I'll get to my 50% here pretty soon. And the 100% entrepreneur stage is that I said, I'm going to be in control. I'm going to be in control of everything, and I'm going to do it all myself. I'm going to wear all the hats. I'm going to do all the financing. So I did, and I've started 5 healthcare companies, sold 3 of them. I have 2 healthcare companies that are still growing and going. One, Jared Polis has been here before, his partner in one of those, international medical travel company, in surgery benefits management. Sounds like that run or the event that you're doing. If you want to come up here,
conference. Yeah.
So anyway, that, and then I've started a couple sports companies. I have one called Sports Shares. It's a fractional luxury suite club like NetJets, but for sports suites. We're in Denver, Atlanta. I'm going to be in Dallas and San Fran. And doing real estate, investor in funds, and Vista Ventures, and other stuff. Just doing a lot of alternative investing, squat in the public markets because of that control issue. And what I found with it was that as being the 100% entrepreneur, as I got wise with it, is that I wanted to be half of that. I want to be a 50% entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is I would rather, instead of taking the idea here and J-curving it through that pain of what you think is going to be a year, turns into 2 years, et cetera, and I'd rather come out and be the investor or get involved with the company once it's gone through a lot of that pain. So maybe it's later stage, growth capital and venture, it's buyouts, those kind of things, and what, where that's happening. And I'll come back to that 50% entrepreneur kind of philosophy here. But that led to me in 07. Can I keep going here, Brad?
I'm giving you 3 more minutes and I have questions.
All right. I'll get to where I am now in the transition. So I get a call from a recruiter in the middle of 07 after I'm running my own family office, and it's an anonymous billionaire family in Colorado looking for somebody to run their investments. And it turns out, the family, the patriarch, it runs a publicly traded company called Teletech. His name's Ken Tuckman. And Ken's just one of the greatest entrepreneurial stories. He started the call center industry for inbound customer service. They've got 50,000 employees globally. It's publicly traded again. So anyway, Ken got a few $100 million of liquidity, at the time, with great foresight in early 07. He said, I want to get closer to the decision making versus some fund investing and things like that for exposure to his risk. So he hired a team, and I said, hey, I'll put my small dollars next to your big dollars, Ken, and let's go and be opportunistic. And that's where we are today with Mantucket Capital. It's a little over $1 billion under management. And we're opportunistic, and we mostly do private equity buyouts. We do distressed assets, special situations. We have a lending platform. We're the pawn shop for Picassos. And which is a great niche business for lending. So anyway, we're opportunistic with it, and that's kind of led to me being this 50% entrepreneur. I can go into a little later. Pause.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
So wind the clock back a little bit to Chemdex. How many people here remember Chemdex? A few. That's good. So Chemdex peaked at $8 billion. You had a couple of partners in Chemdex.
Oh yeah, lots.
Yeah. So what happened to some of the co-founders at Chemdex? Do you keep track of them? David
Perry he's the true genius, the CEO. He was Entrepreneur of the Year nationwide, that year, and so anyway, David he was not able to sell as much in the secondary offering because it would have tanked the stock. But don't feel bad for him. He got plenty of liquidity there, and then he is now running a biotech company in California. I can't remember the name of it, but it's doing very well. Mm-hmm. Strong venture-backed company.
Would you invest in any of the partners that you had back then?
Oh yeah, David. I would all day long. You bet.
Okay. So you went from this time period where you had this sort of big win pre-bubble. You got liquidity. You then watched it fall apart. What time frame did you leave Chemdex? Where was the company when you finally left?
I was kind of a hybrid with it, where I got things started, funded it. I was kind of the consigliere, for the financing strategy, and looking at Morgan Stanley for the iBanker and setting up the term sheets with the venture capital firms and things. But then I got out of active management because I was in love. I was in a new marriage, and I went from Harvard Business School down to Mobile, Alabama to be with my wife. And there's not a whole lot of Silicon Valley in Mobile, Alabama. Great shrimp. It's and Creole, but it was there was some traveling, so I started doing buyouts with some other folks.
Yep. So you end up in Tyler, Texas.
Yeah.
Spend a few minutes on sort of the dynamics around hitting the bottom of that business? What was the emotional range that you had to deal with? What were some of the dynamics you had to deal with when you found out that the guy was embezzling from you and you hadn't really sort of pre-wired everything the way you thought it would be?
A show of hands, anybody ever been a victim of a crime? It doesn't feel very good, and of any size. I had my jean jacket stolen in high school and I felt like crap, but let alone a few $1,000,000. And so that's what it was. You just feel like, it's your fault. You're an idiot, certainly in a business sense. I should have seen it coming. I should have done that background check. I should have that financial control. It was all hindsight that, I should have known. And to boot, I had, it was such a, great deal that I had put some of my dad's money into it, and he was heading towards retirement, which was hands down, and his was, several X factor of less than what I had in it, but that's the money that meant the most to me.
When you found out what was going on with this guy, how did you deal with him sort of through that moment? Because I think one of the entrepreneurial lessons, and for those of you that have been here before, you heard some stories of ups and downs of other relationships, and especially when there was a trust side on the front end of it that got broken somehow. Did you confront him? Did you deal with him? Did you turn it over to the law? Did you ignore him? Did you jump up and down with glee when he got sent to jail? What was your engagement with that? So one lesson in there is the CEO and CFO were in cahoots, and that's a tough chain to break from financial controls. And so and it was this cult of personality. There's only like 25 people in the company, and he had his sister in bookkeeping, and it was just a mess from financial controls. So I was on my own. Everybody else had grown up in Tyler, Texas. And I was in there, so I was on my own. It was hard for me to confront them, so I confronted it through data. Like I gathered evidence, and that's when I had to literally break into my own office to go gather evidence with it. And it was one call to the FBI, and that's all. That's all I had to do. I didn't have to testify, nothing. It was, that it was because actually they went down because of the bank fraud. Yep. So you moved to Denver. Did you know anybody when you moved to Denver?
Just a couple people.
How did you break into the Denver scene as an entrepreneur that was coming from Tyler, Texas?
I have always placed a great emphasis on the power of the network, and it's for me in business it was who I knew first, and then I had to back it up with what I knew. Even Chemdex was because I knew a smart guy like David Perry who could put that business plan really together, and so I started off and got involved in some alumni networks, those kind of things. But then what really rocketed for me from an entrepreneur perspective is in two organizations, a group called EO, or Entrepreneurs Organization. Let's see, I've got a couple of friends who are involved in that up here. And in a group called YPO, or Young Presidents Organization. And those have just been absolutely incredible for my personal development, because you get together and not only talk about, I know you've got some background with EO, right? Mm-hmm. Did you start the chapter here? Mm-hmm. Naturally. Zen underachiever.
It's a good chapter too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great chapter. So anyway, it's really focused on not only business development, but personal and family growth and those kind of things, real confidential environment.
Mm-hmm. So when did you move to Denver? I don't remember the dates.
2002.
2002. So you met Ken in 2007.
Yeah.
So between 2002 and 2007, you went through a range where you were 100% entrepreneur to 50% entrepreneur. And what was the I think a lot of people here understand and have heard the 100% entrepreneur story. What was the break point for you where you started stepping back and saying, being the guy on the front line and having control over everything and having no sort of time and space to think about the other stuff isn't necessarily my thing?
I would say, I was financing most of my ventures myself for a while. And then one of the healthcare companies I started, it's called Smart Care. And Smart Care, I'd start from scratch, some business plan. It's a minor acute retail healthcare center, so clinics. And we got one of the 2 contracts with Walmart. We competed in nationwide bake-off, and Ready Clinic, Steve Case's company, and my company got the 2 contracts. So we put in 15 smart cares within Walmart's right here in the Colorado area. And it started getting away from me because it was really capital intensive. It was more retail than healthcare. And so we had to sell it. It was a good thing, good timing when I did sell it, but I was dealing with a couple of family offices that weren't all aligned, especially in their own asset allocation with it. I don't think they really expected to be that capital intensive. So when that happened, I just, it was in their control. They got in a match after I was sold out of the company. They got in a fight on the board with 2 major family offices, and they just shut it down. It didn't make any sense, and they called everybody up, and that was kind of a turning point for me to say, I'll take some more stability here. It's having a paycheck was kind of cool. I took my first paycheck that I'd ever received since I was an analyst, Alex Brown, 13 years ago, something like that, with it, and sent it to my sister. That first paycheck, it was just so cool, and she needed the money.
Yeah. Talk about some of the personal dynamics that were tested sort of pre-coming to Denver. You alluded to them, but you didn't go very deep on them with your wife, and she got a job when she came here. Obviously, it sounds like you guys made it through that pretty well. What were some of the things that you did as a couple sort of in this moment where it was difficult and you were going through your own evolution, but she was having to put up with whatever was moving around, both in terms of, success and failure, but your personal net worth and the stability about where you're going to be and what you're going to do?
It's, boy, that's a deep one, Brad. Thanks for asking that. So my marriage counseling,
how'd it go?
Therapy here.
Yeah.
Well, my wife actually, she got up in front of several thousand people at we go to a church in Highlands Ranch called Cherry Hills, and it's like Fort God. It's just this huge church, and she got up on stage and did a actor studio kind of format interview, and I was so proud of her, and I heard some things that were really helpful to get me through it. So I'll kind of paraphrase what she said from this. Is that, we were saying, hey, we had a career battle. Here's, I'm an entrepreneur and I want to do this and go here. And she was a news anchor and, top of the market, 1 million people watching her and those kind of things. And it's hard to get a news anchor job. There's just not that many openings. And so I said, honey, this is it. I've been down in Mobile, Alabama for a few years now. I thought it was going to be like a year. And it was our first part of our marriage. And so I said, we're going, it's time. It's time for me and for us in development. We've got to take the leap of faith. And she said, okay, we're going. Well, 8 months later, she's still in Alabama. Now, luckily, I had a Lear 31 pilots to take me back every weekend and things like that, and with Terry Bradshaw, and it was fun, but on the trips. But I didn't have my wife, and I had a new baby, by the way, and she still didn't come with me. So she finally said, she was the one who said, and this is, we're Christians, and she turned it over to the power of prayer and said, what do I do? How do I have Tyler change his mind? And kind of the answer she got in his heart was, I think I need to change. And so she made that leap of faith. And 3 weeks later, she moved. And 3 weeks after that, she got a job anchoring the news in Dallas, Texas. So, he provided, in that sense. And so then it was okay. But, I mean, we were on the brink, for those 8 months. And then after everything happened on the backside of it was like, okay, what do we do? And then she got an offer, and we took it. We moved our family. We got a house. Everything in a 3-week time period. So you got any therapy for that? Anybody got anything to share? Any stories? You guys look like you got stories. Yeah.
I want to take you back to the team experience. So you have a terrific experience with Kendex. Right, and that team formation goes as good as possible. And then with Tyler Jets, it's about as unhappy experience as possible. And I'm wondering, as you pick entrepreneurs now, do you test them in a different way that's informed by that? What should you have looked at differently, or what do you think you did right on the front end? What should have been analyzed at the Jets, and how does that inform how you pick teams today?
Well, one of the things is that the companies that we're really looking at now are we're doing more buyouts than anything, and then we're looking at the assets underneath. So we have just heavy valuation and due diligence on assets. Now for the people, so it's not as dependent as venture stage in our due diligence because the assets where they are. That's my point in that. But in terms of the people and the teams, we do. I still trust but verify. It's going to maybe burn me again someday, but I still like people. And what I really try to do is, it sounds simple, but is to really get to know them, establish a relationship, almost in a social sense, and hang out with them and talk and get those kind of things going. And then we just do intense due diligence with background checks and to the level of, private eyes on, certain things and, lots of reference checks, those kind of things. But then it's, structure of the company, organizational design, financial controls. We're pretty intense about controls.
When you got the call from an anonymous billionaire, what was the first thought that went through your mind?
I hope he owns a sports team. But I didn't. So it was intriguing to say, man, I can do bigger deals. I don't have to fundraise. That's pretty cool, and I can have the rights of your preferred stock rights or whatever, of having the power of several $1 million in the investment rather than several $100,000 in investment. And that was really appealing to co-invest.
What was the dance like as the two of you got to know each other? Because it's a pretty big commitment on Ken's side to bring somebody on to do that.
He's really an intense individual, especially intellectually intense. So he had me go and test and look at a couple of deals. Do some analysis and recommendation if we should do the deal or not and how to structure it. I took a couple of personality tests and those kind of things, and lots of other due diligence he talked to. They had in the process, they had called the private equity community in Colorado and said who's out there, and of 10 calls I came up on six of the lists, and just out of the blue, like I don't know how that happened except for the power of the network, is that those are a lot of my running buddies are private equity people in town.
What was the cycle time from first call to shaking hands and deciding to work together?
Probably about 4 or 5 months, yeah.
Yeah. Any point during that 4 or 5 months where you felt like, this isn't the right thing? No. I was pretty committed. And 3 years later, including one major financial crisis in the middle of it, what's been the 50% entrepreneur experience? How has that felt after 5 years of intense control previous to it?
It's great. It's our performance. We're up 59% in 2008 and over in the 70s in 2009 in our performance, the capital that I deployed. And it's because Ken was smart enough to have a lot of liquidity and to see the world's bloodiest recession, coming, and to invest to it. And we were able to get through that because he had that foresight. Now, our investing is, digress here, Brad, but is strategic, outbound, thesis-oriented. So, I had a thesis of 4 sectors that we should invest in if it was going to be that bad of a recession. And we bought 2 companies in those sectors. And then in 2009, we did mostly distressed situations, as we're talking about.